Hello and welcome back to The Path, the podcast from Lifestyle RX. As always, my name is Dan, and joining me today is Dr. Brennan Byrne. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well, Dan. Good to see you.
Good, yeah, good to see you too. Okay, so in today's episode, we're going to be talking about something that I'm sure everyone listening has heard of before, and that is the drug called Ozempic. So it's obviously a medication for diabetes, but it's been huge in the popular culture lexicon too as of late. So maybe we should start out with: is this some sort of miracle drug, or is it just hype, or what's the situation with it?
So it's probably a little bit of both. I think anytime the Kardashians get involved with something, there's a bit of hype. That being said, it's the semaglutide, which is kind of the generic name underneath Ozempic, really is a game changer. And there's a set of drugs that are coming that are game changers in terms of weight loss and in terms of diabetes. So very powerful drugs, drugs that frankly we're learning more about as time goes on. And they're drugs that I think have actually really changed people's view of obesity and weight gain. Because we've tended to have this kind of a calorie is a calorie, and if you just would eat less and move more, your weight will improve. And yet we kind of see the struggles that people obviously have with diet. And then Ozempic comes along, and for a lot of people, they get very, very significant weight loss with the drug. So yeah, it's, and we'll go through it, I think, today, just in terms of where it fits in our approach. But I think it is a game changing, I think these drugs are game changers, but they're also really hyped. And I think that we need to look at them in a really considered fashion if we want to, do no harm, as we say.
Perfect. So maybe I guess to start out with, how does Ozempic or other drugs and like it, like how do they actually work? What do they do?
Yeah. So they're drugs that they mimic the action of hormones that your gut produces. These hormones, you'll hear them called incretins. Doesn't really help. Not much of a description there, but they're satiation hormones. They're, amongst other things, they're satiation hormones. And so, one of the miracles of our body is, in the course of a year, we eat 1.25 million calories. And many people across a year will stay at the same weight. You think about that. You think of the variety of food that we eat, the times that we eat, and kind of all the different holidays and everything else. And somehow we stay in balance. And it clearly isn't because we've all got an app on our phone that we're counting calories with. So our bodies are actually tremendously organized to kind of maintain this balance. And so part of it is we have kind of a natural appetite. And that natural appetite, if we look at it from a hormone perspective, is driven by, hunger hormones. But it's triggered by kind of the amount of lean muscle mass we have is probably the closest thing that we see to kind of what correlates with our base appetite level. And then we have kind of at baseline, we also have a measure from our fat cells that comes back to our brain. All this is actually happening in our brain, in part of the brain called the hypothalamus. So not a conscious part of the brain, but part of the brain nonetheless. So our fat cells send a signal coming back that, how much energy do we have stored, right? So, what do we have in the battery, right? And so if we think about ourselves as a battery, because we do store energy like a battery, we get that signal. And then when from meal to meal, we kind of have to manage that we eat enough. And then, again, we're eating for three reasons, right? We're eating for energy, but we're also eating for growth and repair. And so for energy, it's kind of how much energy content is coming in. And then growth and repair, there's obviously micronutrients, but the kind of big kind of thing that we got to keep track of is protein. And it seems like we keep track of that a little bit differently than energy. So essentially, when we eat a meal, we need to know when to stop eating, right? And and in order to maintain energy balance, and then that needs to affect kind of that baseline appetite for the next meal, right? So our body is designed to send signals kind of as the food starts going through our system. We get all sorts of signals. So we get signals from our stomach stretching, but we get these hormones that get released from the gut. And so one of the hormones that gets released, and there's probably about 10 or 11 hormones that we know of that gets released. And so one of the hormones that gets released is something called GLP-1, or glucagon-like peptide 1. So GLP-1 gets released, and it does a whole bunch of things, right? And so one of the things it does is it sends a satiation signal back to the brain that tells us to stop eating. And these signals usually take about 20 minutes. So that's kind of why, like, chew your food, take time. It actually takes a while to build up the satiation signal. So slowing down your eating, actually, you'll probably eat less just because you'll get the satiation signal. For many of us, 20 minutes, we've already done the dishes, right? So if we eat really quickly, we won't get the satiation signal till afterwards. But so that's what, semaglutide does, is it mimics GLP-1, which is one of our satiation hormones. And so that has a very profound effect because, normally we only get this GLP-1 after we eat a meal, and then it disappears pretty quickly, right? Like, it kind of comes and goes. But if we take this shot, and semaglutide is a weekly shot that we take, if we take that, we have kind of a higher level of GLP-1 signaling on the brain, telling us that we're full all the time. And so from a weight loss perspective, semaglutide or Ozempic works because we simply just won't eat as much, right? And so that's kind of good if we think about it from the energy perspective. If we're trying to lose weight, we're kind of in energy overload. So yeah, that's good. We eat a little bit less, we'll use more of our stored energy. From the growth and repair standpoint, there's some problems with that, right? Because we might not eat enough protein. We might not need enough macronutrients. So that's going to be one of the things that we will maybe talk a little bit more about. But it's you want to have a strategy around how you're eating before going on these drugs. So just being prescribed the drug without any kind of nutritional counseling or guidance, I don't think is helpful. I actually think it can be really harmful. The other thing is, the GLP-1, GLP-1, our natural hormone, and these GLP-1 agonists, which is kind of a fancy word for mimicking, they have other effects, right? And so from a diabetes perspective, it helps with releasing a little bit more insulin a little bit more quickly in response to the meal, which is useful because that initial kind of release of insulin from the pancreas it'll shut the liver down from producing more glucose. So that helps keep that initial blood sugar control. You don't get that initial spike as much. And then the other thing it does is it sends a signal that it blocks the glucagon signal to the liver. And glucagon is a hormone that tells your liver to produce more glucose. And so those two effects are really probably more why we see kind of the initial reduction of blood sugars when you go on Ozempic. The longer term effect is really on the basis of, as you lose weight, you pull fat off the liver, which is driving the liver insulin resistance, which allows that balance to restore between kind of insulin resistance and insulin. So that longer term effect is probably more a weight loss effect, but it has an immediate effect on blood sugars, which is often actually really helpful. So it's a good drug from that perspective.
Cool. And then so is it, I guess the question is it safe? Is doing this, mimicking this hormone, like, what are the risks that could come with?
So the drug's been around for a while. So yes, it's safe in the sense that it's Health Canada approved, it's FDA approved, it's been through all of that. As we start to see kind of it being prescribed to a lot more people, we're starting to see we're starting to see some other safety concerns that are out there. So so when I look at it, I tend to look at this with every drug. It's you don't really know that a drug is fully safe till it's been around for like 30 years, right? Because you've had a whole and it gets prescribed in high volumes. So we're hearing about side effects and things right now, and in terms of like something called gastroparesis, where because one of the effects of GLP-1 is it actually slows down your stomach from emptying, right? So you feel full because it's not moving out of your stomach very quickly. We're seeing cases of people that are like their stomach's almost like becoming paralyzed and doesn't work properly, and so they're having stomach emptying issues. Still hard to know, kind of, I don't think we fully understand that yet. There have been associations between semaglutide and some rare forms of cancer. We still don't really know kind of how significant that is, as well as some relationship to pancreas and pancreatitis. That again, as it gets more common, I'm not sure those things are necessarily necessarily a reason potentially not to take the drug. What we don't know though is like we didn't really understand this effect on weight loss, and it actually was really discovered as you started to push the dosage up. And so the dose that we use in diabetes and what Ozempic, kind of maximum dose for Ozempic as the drug, is 1 milligram kind of once a week. When you go to a higher dose, like 2.4 is kind of what they're marketing Ozempic or marketing semaglutide as under the drug name Wegovy.
Mm-hmm.
When you go to 2.4 mil, you get a much bigger weight loss reduction. And then we're also seeing kind of effects, and people are reporting them around changes in addictive behavior. So it's decreasing some of the addiction patterns. So these things have profound effects on the brain. We don't really know all the effects of this. Whenever you kind of look at bodies and hormones, whenever you kind of crank up the level of something, usually the body responds by decreasing the response at the receptor level, right? And so again, we kind of like, I don't know that we completely understand this. So back to the question, is it safe? Yeah, I think it's safe, right? Like I don't want to alarm people, and I think that that my concerns around long-term safety are not to say that this drug is not safe. But I always just like to say there's always a risk of taking any drug, right?
Yeah.
And so there is that risk, and there's obviously a benefit, and you're always balancing risk and benefit. What I look at is if we need to take the medication, then yes, it's safe, and we can take that risk because we're going to drive that benefit.
Yeah.
If there's a way around taking the medication, any medication, then we should probably go down that path first. And that's really the base of lifestyle medicine, right? We believe these lifestyle behaviors are so powerful. And if we spend some time and effort on the lifestyle behaviors, we often don't need the medicine. But when we do need the medicine, we'll have the confidence that, actually need this. It's worth taking that small risk of taking this medication in order to get this benefit.
Yeah, the benefits outweigh the risks in that case. Then it's
exactly.
Yeah. And then what about, I know I've heard people talk about this, that there's some side effects that are not that serious like we just talked about, but like, like upset stomach or gastrointestinal side effects. What other kind of more common side effects are there from it?
Yeah. So this I think is practical as well in terms of things, right? So probably 15 or 20% of people just can't take the drug. They just feel sick on it, right? Or they get diarrhea. We do try to mitigate that by starting at a really low dose and gradually building the dosage up. And so sometimes you'll see people who only can take 0.25 or 0.5. And interestingly, some people get benefit at that level. And so again, kind of as we're titrating it up, sometimes we're a little bit like, hey, you know what? It's having this effect on blood sugars, and you're losing weight with it, and you're at a dosage that you're really tolerating. Let's not go any higher. So, so the GI side effects are kind of the big ones that people will tend to see. And then sometimes there's just kind of this underlying feeling of nausea, right?
Mm.
And it's kind of interesting because you kind of think about, like, when you feel full and you've kind of overeaten, you kind of feel like nauseous or sick.
Yeah. Yeah.
And people will have that. And that's probably more common than not, right? Is that
Mm.
people kind of notice that. And one of the things I've noticed just in terms of my practice with it is, um, people put up with that while they're losing weight. And then after a while, when they've lost the weight, that starts to
Tired of
wear on. Yeah. It just, you're kind of like walking around like you never quite feel right. Like you never quite feel good. And
it.
so that's definitely a potential kind of longer term thing where it's not a critical side effect. And people, as you know, if you're losing significant weight and it's really working for you, you're going to say, okay, I can put up with that. But when you kind of get to the maintenance kind of standpoint, then boy, that's going to be problematic,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Interesting. So I guess you personally in your practice, do you prescribe this often? Do you use it often? How are you using Ozempic currently?
So I definitely use it. I wouldn't say often. Our practice, as everybody knows, kind of we've got a program to really kind of teach this lifestyle strategy. And I find more often than not, people don't need the drug. And now many people come into the program on the drug and we don't stop it. We don't
Yeah.
say stop that and do it our way. Um, but we don't prescribe. And in fact, as a rule, we generally try not to prescribe or even change medications up front. Really what we want to do is let you kind of work on this lifestyle strategy, work on the 4+2 strategy,
Yeah.
feel the effects of that. And more often than not, we start to deprescribe medications as we go. But some people do get stuck in that they have a really hard time losing weight. They're not they're doing all the right things, but it's not moving. And
Yeah.
we especially see that, subtype 3, the severe insulin resistance, the
Mm.
people that, I joke about as having the super pancreases where there's a lot of insulin. Insulin is the storage hormone. Insulin signals, store energy, and it stops you from burning fat. And so sometimes those people have a really hard time getting the weight loss started. And so we'll find kind of at the end of the 12 weeks, it's like, I really, I've changed my nutrition and I'm really feeling good about that. And I'm exercising, and sleep and stress really aren't an issue, yet I'm not moving, right? Or I've lost a few pounds, but I'm nowhere near to being on the path to getting enough weight loss to reverse the insulin resistance by getting rid of the liver fat. So those people, what we'll do is talk about it and say, hey, there are other things in the toolkit, right? And
Yeah.
so one of the things in the toolkit is we can pull out, an Ozempic prescription and use that. And then the nice part about prescribing it after you've done the lifestyle piece is you're really confident person's exercising and they're eating enough protein, so they're going to maintain muscle, right? Because one of the things that we see, and I, kind of, I don't know that it's the side effect, but it's certainly it's an undesired effect, is if you look at the studies on Ozempic, 40% of the weight loss is coming from lean mass. And so lean mass includes muscle. And if we look at healthy weight loss, that number should be about 10%. And so we think that, a lot of people are losing muscle on this, and it just makes sense, right? Because you're just not going to eat as much. So you probably don't eat enough protein. You've heard me say this over and over, Dan. It's like, we store, when we eat food, we store fat, we store carbs, we don't store protein, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So if you have a protein deficit every day, you're going to withdraw a bit of protein from your muscles for kind of your protein needs. And so over time, you start to lose lean muscle mass. And of course, in the 4+2 strategy, that's really counterproductive because the muscles are our metabolic engine. And so we definitely don't want to lose muscle. And so I kind of like that we kind of get people through the lifestyle part of the program, and often people that are kind of in that subtype 3, when I meet with them, I'll say, look, it might be hard for you to lose weight because you've got the super pancreas and it's doing, it's pumping out a lot of insulin. But we do have other things we can do. So don't fret, don't despair. What I found with that is it seemed, I haven't done the numbers on this, and I will at some point try to figure this out. But while I say that to people that are kind of in subtype 3, I honestly can't predict it, because a lot of those people come back and they lose weight just fine, and it's like it all worked. But some of them do come back and it's like, okay, we haven't really moved the needle on weight. But we've made all these good lifestyle changes. So it's like, okay, that's part of this path. Now let's see. We can do the prescription for semaglutide, and that can be helpful in that. So I've had quite a number of patients that will get success for that. The other thing sometimes we'll do is actually just have them work more closely with their dietitians. And there you get to a little bit more like, well, let's actually be let's be a little bit more restrictive within our nutrition strategy. So we're gonna have a 16-hour fast, but let's maybe drop down to 2 meals. Let's be very diligent on protein. Let's prioritize kind of exercise to maintain muscle mass, while kind of really creating a much more intentional calorie deficit. And that can be an approach as well. The other thing that we sometimes do is say, look, you've made these changes in 12 weeks. Maybe the 12 weeks just simply isn't long enough to see the effect. If you feel good, and most people do, they actually feel better, so that even though they haven't lost the weight, well, sometimes say, let's just give it 12 more weeks, right? Just like, let's not get hung up on the weight loss. You're still doing great. Let's just give it more time. So that's kind of, during that action plan meeting at the end of the 12 weeks, those are some of the conversations we'll end up having. And so sometimes it does result in a prescription. And then we feel much more comfortable prescribing it.
Yeah. And then, so we talked about this a little bit already, but how do you do the dosing? Like, how do you decide what dose someone should start with, and how does it work up to a higher dose, or what's the system used for that?
Yeah, so we really go with what's recommended by the manufacturer. Kind of, we'll start at the 0.25 once a week for 4 weeks, and then we go up to 0.5 once a week for 4 weeks. Then we go up to 1.0, and then from there, you kind of, if you're still not getting weight loss, then kind of what a lot of us will do, and this is off-label for Ozempic, we may go up to do 1 milligram twice a week, and kind of push the dosage up into that territory that we see with Wegovy, kind of the branded drug, which isn't available in Canada yet. So that's kind of the general direction that we will head with it, and really kind of and I said this before, we'll try to stick with the lowest dose that we're getting good weight loss at, and so kind of if we're getting kind of a pound of weight loss per week, I'm really comfortable at that level, just leaving it. You do sometimes see higher kind of levels of weight loss with this, so we don't really want that rapid weight loss, because that is associated with more lean muscle mass loss. So that's kind of the general kind of approach to it.
That makes sense. And we mentioned this a couple of times, but you mentioned Wegovy, and I think I've heard of another one called Mounjaro or something, however you pronounce it like that. So are those the same medication with a different name or a different label? Or how is the difference between those three?
Yeah. So Ozempic is semaglutide. Wegovy is semaglutide. Wegovy's higher dosage, different indication. It's for weight loss. Okay. Mounjaro is a different drug called tirzepatide. So it's a GLP-1 agonist, so it mimics GLP-1. It also mimics another gut hormone called GIP, and there we're really getting into unknown territory, because we don't really know what GIP, all the things that GIP does. So yeah, I was having a conversation with Jim Johnson, who's a UBC professor on this, and he's a diabetes specialist, and you know, we really don't know all the effects of these intestinal hormones. Like we're learning almost as much from prescribing the drug. So anyways, they're Mounjaro or tirzepatide's even more effective from a weight loss perspective than semaglutide at the higher doses. And then there's a pipeline of other drugs coming, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, from a standpoint of looking at these, it's awesome. I think it's awesome if we think about having like this toolkit that we really can help people with. And my passion here is to, I think that 50% of people who have type 2 diabetes could achieve remission with combination of lifestyle and medicine. I think that this gives us the toolkit that becomes a very credible thing to be able to say. So I think that's the hopeful side of it. The less hopeful side is just that we don't make any of the lifestyle changes, and we use these drugs while continuing to eat the foods that are the problem in the first place.
Yeah.
And we definitely see that, right? Like we definitely see, you see it kind of through the common media and social media. People like, hey, this is great. I can eat all the stuff I like to eat. I just don't eat as much of it, and so therefore it's all good. And that troubles me just in the sense that the ultra processed foods that are causing this problem. I think that to continue to eat them, I'm not sure that we're coming out the other end of that healthier.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah. So it becomes kind of one of those things where I feel like, we're as a society, we're allowing companies to sell us food that isn't really food. It's kind of, manufactured nutrients that truly lead us to overeating. So we're kind of allowing companies to sell that, and then we're allowing other companies to sell us drugs to address this. And then there's even kind of work in the pipeline around giving us drugs so that we can keep muscle on while we're doing all this. And so to me, I just the logic of it kind of is like, okay, we're doing all the, so you think about how complex the body is, right? Like, it's this amazingly complex system that we're still, probably, we don't fully, well, we certainly don't fully understand it. We probably don't understand, a tenth of what's going on.
Yeah.
And we're doing all these really big disruptive things, and then we're doing multiple of them. And we think we're going to end up on the healthier side of things when in fact, there's a set of things that we can do that are behavioral, that can actually change the game, that we don't need to use the drug. So again, kind of my view, and obviously I'm lifestyle medicine guy, is like common sense would be like, let's figure out kind of on the nutrition side, and we can do better there. And I think what I do love with these drugs though is it's really kind of pointed out that a lot of weight gain and weight loss is really a satiation issue.
Yeah.
It's all in your brain.
Yeah.
It's all around the satiation. And so a drug that mimics a satiation hormone works. But guess what else gives you satiation signals?
Eating enough protein and fiber, right?
Exactly. Like real food, right? So if you strip out fiber from food, and you create these ultra processed foods that, frankly, I think they're like stealth calories, right? So, back to that 1.25 million calories per year. Well, the challenge is, you've got to, your gut has to be able to interpret all those foods. Yeah. But we've got foods coming in that, our gut thinks, like that Big Mac, the cheese, the large fries, and the milkshake, the 2,100 calories that just came in, our body the stuff gets absorbed so quickly. Maybe there's 600 calories there, and so you end up overeating because you just don't perceive, you don't get the right signal.
Yeah.
So it's a bit weird that, we're eating foods that doesn't give us a satiation signal. So we're going to take a hormone that gives us the satiation signal and
We
have
can
that around
keep
all the
eating
time.
the bad food. Yeah.
Right. So anyway, so that's kind of where I feel that things can be a bit misguided. Right.
Yeah.
And it, I think that kind of as a society, we kind of have a collective eating disorder around some of these foods
Hmm.
because we know these things aren't good for us, yet we're letting we're letting our kids do it. We're doing it.
Yeah.
It's hard not to do it, right? And so then to kind of to go to a pharmaceutical product in order to address that. To me, it makes much more sense to say, hey, let's work on kind of some better nutrition habits. Frankly, let's try to avoid some of these things that are going to not work with our system.
Yeah.
And then let's use these drugs when we need them, and let's have them there because, I'm sure that a lot of people listening right now are patients in the program that are finding it hard to get their Ozempic, right?
Yeah. I heard
The
there's shortages and supply
yeah,
problems.
the
Yeah.
1 milligram dose is not available right now at most pharmacies.
Hmm.
And so, the people are getting swapped over to other similar drugs, and that may not work quite as well as what they've been taking. So that's not good. And part of that is that a lot of people are being prescribed the drugs, really when there's other things that they could do, right?
Yeah.
And so kind of the celebrities kind of promoting this as a way to kind of get ready for swimsuit season, or dropping that last kind of 10 or 15 pounds. I think it's adding to our kind of collective eating disorder that we're
Yeah.
kind of going down that direction. So that troubles me.
Definitely. Okay, maybe a couple more questions that I have here for you. So, is there any specific person that you would say you would never like? Is there any specific things that you would say I would never give this person one of these types of drugs because of X, Y, Z or something like that? Or is everyone generally able to, if they need it, benefit or use it?
So yeah, for older people, people in their 70s or above, um, I would I'm really, really careful with using them, and
Mm.
really want to be sure that there's other strategies in place to maintain kind of the lean muscle mass, right? Um, I think, I'll joke. There's not a single person I know that's 90 years old that wishes they had less muscle, right?
Valid. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So as we age, we lose muscle, and part of that's we don't do as much, but really part of it is it's very hard to maintain and keep muscle, and so to have a chance to keep your muscle, you've got to eat enough
Mhm.
protein, and the protein amounts that you have to eat often are hard to eat, and again, why are they hard to eat? They send a satiation signal, and it's hard to override the satiation signal. So
Yeah.
eating protein is hard to eat enough, and then people as they get older, they we call it anabolic resistance. Their muscles, there's this kind of sweet spot of protein, so it's kind of, we often say it's between 30 and 50 grams of protein with each meal, and you need to probably do that 3 times a day for a lot of people, two and maybe two for some, but probably 3 times a day for most. If you're on a drug that's making you feel full all the time and slightly nauseous, that may be really hard to do. So
Mm.
I'm really kind of careful with people there. And then the other piece is I tend to want to use them transiently, right? I tend to kind of
Yeah.
want to use them like tool in the toolkit to either get weight loss started, and then once we've kind of got weight loss started, we'll wean them off. And so that becomes a factor. Now, one other thing I should probably mention with these drugs is there are benefits to them. We do see cardiovascular and kidney benefits to these drugs. And so there are some indications above and
Mm.
beyond kind of just purely blood sugar control and weight loss that makes these drugs potentially something that somebody might stay on for a long period of time. There are alternatives to Ozempic or GLP-1s for that. So there's a whole class of drugs called SGLT2s. People kind of know Jardiance is probably the most common name. So we have alternatives for some of those benefits, but that may be a reason that we actually do keep somebody on these drugs longer. But again, probably a lower dose. And then if they're continuing to struggle to eat enough protein, then it would actually probably be a reason to switch them over to something else that has that cardiovascular or renal or kidney benefit.
Cool. And then I know we talked about some other similar drugs, but I know that Ozempic is taken like as an injection. Is there similar ones that are taken orally, or is other options like that?
So there is a version of semaglutide, Rybelsus, that you can take as a pill, and it works. It's a daily pill, and it works. I'm not sure it works as well. They say it does, but yeah, and to be fair, it's probably not a drug I've been using as much. People don't mind the once a week injection because it's really not a difficult thing with
probably easier than remembering to take a pill every day at a certain point.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And then there are other GLP-1s other than semaglutide that are on the market. And people are now, getting kind of alternative prescriptions for those. Those have most of the same benefits from the blood sugar control, but don't seem to have the same benefits in terms of the weight loss. And so there's probably more variation there. So there are other alternatives there. And then there's this whole pipeline of these drugs that are coming, which, as I said, I think is exciting in some ways. It's a bit daunting if we think about kind of these drugs not being used well and how we're going to try and address that kind of from a societal or public health perspective. But as the clinician trying to help people achieve remission, I'll take more tools in the toolkit.
For sure. Okay, so that was a lot of information. Maybe you summarize, or as the tech people like to say, can you give the TLDR of this whole conversation?
For sure. So I think that Ozempic or semaglutide, it is a game changer. It's a great addition, additional tool in the toolkit. But I think kind of bottom line is you should only use the drug if you really need to use the drug, and should really try to maximize everything on the lifestyle side first, and then come to the drug at a point where you know that kind of you know why you're taking it, how what the plan is in terms of how long you're going to take it and kind of how you're going to come off of the drug. And so that would kind of be the summary is good drug to have in the toolkit from kind of a clinician standpoint. It gives hope for people that are really struggling to lose weight, and so it definitely can be a part of a person's transformation. And there's no sometimes I want to just be clear, while we're always pushing lifestyle ahead of medicine, there's no shame if you need the tool, right? Like that's why we have medicine, right? Like we've benefited from all these medicines. We just want to use them when they're needed. And so if you need it, then great. It's awesome to have there. And hopefully the supply will be there if you do need it. So we'll leave it there.
Sounds good. Perfect. And if you want to start on that lifestyle transition and you already haven't, our program is available in BC, Alberta, and Ontario, and it's covered by provincial health benefits. And you can sign up today at lifestylерx.ca. And if you know anyone else that would benefit from the program or even just this podcast, share the podcast with them. And you can send the link from YouTube, your podcast app, wherever you're listening. And we'd be happy to have them listen to us. So thank you so much, Brendan, for once again sharing all of your knowledge with us. That was a great episode, and we'll talk to you next week.
All right. Thanks, Dan.
Bye-bye.